Good morning.
How are
Just
you
one
doing?
second. Fine.
Okay,
Good morning, dear students, dear Sergey. How are you?
very
I
well,
hope
thank you so much.
I hope everything is fine. So
Yes.
welcome to our course, Human Resource Management Master Course. Before start, as always, I have to remember you that we are saving this course. And today, starting from today, we will change the roles. You will give your two presentations. First, this week you will give employer branding. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so just one second. I have to give permission. Uh, so yes, now you have the permission. If you want, you can upload any presentation, PowerPoint, or you can just read
I will
what.
share my PowerPoint presentation with you if everything's fine. So let me start doing that. And please let me know if you can see that.
Okay.
That's the one I'm sharing now.
Uh-huh.
Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, now I can see it.
All right, very good. Okay, can I start?
Yes, please.
Right, okay. So, first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me that interesting topic. This is a relatively new topic in the science because actually it dates back to the early 90s where this notion originates. And I would say that for the science, this is just a relatively short period of time. But still, anyway, I guess that nowadays it plays an important role. And today we're going to speak about many of the aspects of this notion employer branding. Okay, so let me start my presentation. First of all, as we have mentioned before, we can do that in the interactive form. So I'm going to start with my question. What do you think is employer branding? How do you define that? Or how
You
do you
are,
understand?
yeah, you are waiting answer from my side or just,
Well, I'm just asking a question. If you want to answer, you're welcome.
yeah, yeah,
If
of
no,
course.
okay, I will
No,
do
no,
it myself.
I can give it. According to my idea, first of all, employer branding has a relationship with branding activities.
Okay.
Am I right?
And why? You are absolutely right. But in this case, the combination that is employer branding. I mean,
Uh-huh,
if we take branding in the marketing sense,
uh-huh.
it's about the companies, it's about their brands, it's about the marketing activity. But now this is employer, which
But
is
there must be one relationship between them.
all
Normally,
right.
before asking the question, I know the answer.
Anyway,
Normally,
you pretend to be a student
yeah.
today, so that is why you pretend that you don't know the answer. All
No,
right.
no.
So,
Okay, I
well,
want to give one answer for employer branding.
please, please, you're welcome.
Employer branding is, in a way, a process giving more better opportunity for especially employees in terms of economical, functional, and psychological benefits.
Psychological, exactly.
Am I right?
Yes, you're right. You're right. And there are
As
some
always.
more, as always, exactly. But there are some other aspects I would also like to discuss. Yes, you have correctly spotted those three components of employer branding, and I'm going
And
to have a look.
the main purpose of applying employer branding is, first of all, receiving or working possibility with the high qualified personnel. At the same time, having continuous high motivated employees, or in terms of retention of better ones. So that's why they apply employer branding.
Here
Yes.
you mentioned this war for talent.
Uh-huh. Huh?
Yes,
No,
that was,
it is
yeah,
also both for talent management for the next
yes,
weeks, and at
exactly.
the same time inside of employer branding you can find the same purpose too.
Yes, that's right. You're absolutely right. Let me add to what you have just said. There is a notion, I'm going to speak about that a little bit later. It's called war for talents. It was introduced by Kinsey and Company, and this reflects what you have just said. Okay, talented, very qualified people, talents out there are, not very common things. So that is why brands now have to treat that aspect very carefully. All right, let me speak about that a little bit later. Thank you very much for your answer. It was full, it was good. It must be like you have some previous knowledge on that. All right. So, okay. First of all, let me define what employer brand is. We know what the brand in the marketing sense is. Okay, let me define what employer brand is. So employer brand refers to the reputation that an organization has as the employer. Okay, we know the brand in the marketing sense, like a producer, let's say Coca-Cola is a very famous, drink producer and the brand. For example, Starbucks is the same for coffee, McDonald's for fast food and so on. These are famous brands for their products. But here we speak about brand in the HR context as the employer. So if the employer is being treated as the brand, and this is mainly the company's reputation, the opinion that people out there have about this company. Let me ask you a question. Do you know Jeff Bezos?
Yes, very much. He is the richest person nowadays in the world.
Well, of course, it changes. It changes.
Yeah,
but okay, let me say that
he is the leader. Sometimes the order may change, but we have top two persons,
exactly.
and both of them visited Turkey in 2 months ago, I think, in 2 months period.
Really?
By their special yachts.
That's
super
good.
yacht, mega yachts. Yes.
All right. So I would say that Jeff Bezos is one of those, top businessmen, top successful businessmen with a success story, and that is why his opinion is valuable. Let me give what Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, says about the employer brand. He says that your brand is your reputation. This is what people say when you're not in the room. And what he spotted now is that this is all the types of information that people have about your brand as an employer. Your potential workers or your present workers or your influencers, that all of them, they summarize the opinion, which is summarized in the reputation, and this is what we call the employer brand at core. So, we have already mentioned employer brand as the notion. Now, let me speak about what employer branding is. Is it the same as the brand? I wouldn't say that it is the same, but there are some differences. Now, what employer branding is? This idea, this notion, refers to the tools and practices, as you have mentioned, which an organization manages its brand or reputation as an employer among certain specified audience groups. Again, the main difference between employer brand and branding is that brand is the notion. Okay, this is the sign, this is the image, this is the reputation. Branding is the tools and practices, activities, techniques, whatever organization uses in order to retain its reputation, to make it better, and to have a good word out there.
So can we say branding is a process, but brand is a result or output?
Yes, in this case, I mean, generally it can be said so. Branding is the combination of activities, tools, and practices, what you do in order to sustain a really, really good brand, a really reliable employer brand. Let me say it like this. Right, so, moreover, employer branding is everything you do. Your policies, your recruitment advertising, your induction programs, your trainings, your interviews, the management, and other means that you have which influence how the organization is viewed and perceived by those people whom the company is in contact. They can be your present employees, your potential employees, peers, parents, influencers, people out there, your competitors also. Okay, so the broad range of people that the company is contacting with. Of course, the consumers, their opinion also is very important, not in the employer branding context, of course, but still they have their opinion of another type, but still. Now, here if we take this, if we have a look at the difference between employer brand and employer branding, I would say that here we need to have a look at the idea that while you certainly exert influence over your company employer brand, your employer branding means that techniques, activities, and tools can be directly controlled and managed. And nowadays, since I would say that the middle 90s, many companies turn into treating this aspect quite seriously, because promoting and retaining a really good and reputable employer brand will have certain positive economic benefits. I will speak about that later in more detail with some figures. Do you have any questions up to the moment?
No, everything is clear. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, let me continue with that. Now, let me speak a little bit about the history. I have already mentioned that the topic arose in the 90s, and it refers back to December 1996, when two researchers, Tom Ambler, who used to be the Senior Fellow of London Business School, and Simon Barrow, the Chairman of London of People in Business, they introduced this term in the Journal of Brand Management. And since that time, in the science, these notions started to be explored. But again, it dates back to the mention of it in the 1996, December 1996, in this Journal of Brand Management. Now, what was the purpose of introducing this notion? Again, as we said, that employer branding is a kind of a cross-border notion which is between, let's say, human resource practice and marketing practice. So the idea of these authors was to apply the brand and consumer thinking in the fields of HR and talent management. And in this case, this is how Ambler and Barrow defined the employer brand. To their mind, this is the package, or let me say a combination, of functional, economic, and psychological benefits provided by employment and identified with the employing company. So this is their definition of employer brand that they're using. And of course, as we said before, employer branding is the activity that promotes and sustains and retains this kind of package of all of those benefits provided by employment. So I have already mentioned that there was a very interesting notion. It's called War for Talent. It was introduced in 1997 by McKinsey & Company. They introduced the topic saying that, or focusing that, there is a global marketplace in which it becomes more difficult for organizations to attract and retain top talent. And if you ask me this question, and I'm sure that you will, why those researchers come up with this idea? I mean, was that just a scientific purpose behind that, or was that a practical necessity for introducing this kind of topic? While doing this literature review and looking at that, I came to the conclusion that it mainly happened because of all of those kind of, activities and situation that happens in the 90s, the second half of the 90s, that they denoted this war for talent. And it means that at that time, the companies started to feel the lack of well-qualified, top-qualified talents. And they also couldn't find any instruments to retain them. That became the problem. Okay, we can pay them more, but is that a guarantee that a person is going to stay with us? There was no guarantee. So the companies, I guess that there was a close combination between companies, like between businesses and scientific world. So they started to think about the problem and how to solve the problem, because war for talent exists still up to now. So,
dear Sergey, let me add you one thing. Before facing this kind of new paradigms or new management techniques, we can see some pressures coming from very famous universities or schools. This is one side. Again, as you said, we can face another force coming from practice, from sector,
Yes.
and at the same time, with the help of press and with the help of sometimes consultancy firms, we need to rethink let's say what is happening and what kind of changes are we gonna face or experience. So as always, there are mostly external and at the same time internal factors affecting the companies as a whole. And as you said, by giving examples, sometimes, I mean, for example, for today's topic, we saw two persons behind. And of course, some positive orientations coming from famous universities or academia, let's say, in general. So we always face the same thing. Before facing any kind of change, there are some pressures. Sometimes there are some problems in practice, in sector, and in order to solve these problems, or because of the orientations coming from different sides, we have to speak new things, new management techniques, etc.
Yes, I agree with that. So that is why I have mentioned this war for talent in order just to describe the background. I mean, was that a necessity? Was it done, let's say, that artificially for scientific purpose? No, it wasn't done like this. And let me just have a look at the background in here. So let's say that by the 1990s, employers start to realize that just simply paying more for talented employees was not going to produce any guarantees that those talents, those qualified managers would stay with the company. So it was a problem for them, and McKinsey and Company defined that as the war for talent. Because, okay, it was difficult for companies to attract and to retain those very qualified managers. That was the very common situation. Then the company started to think about different other instruments and making some efforts to try to find a solution, what they could offer for as, let's say, that above those functional and economic benefits. Okay, so we pay more. Is that a guarantee that that manager will stay with us? Okay, that's a social pack, and we're going to subsidize whatever kind of programs, specially designed programs to retain those top management. Is that a guarantee that the managers will stay with us? Finally, the companies realized that it wasn't enough to do that. It should be something else that would make those top managers behave in a more loyal way to the companies, like Japanese companies, where I mean, the whole scheme, the system of values, it is designed in that the person is dreaming of starting and finishing working the same company. I would say that maybe it would be a dream come true for American companies, for European companies, but psychologically, European people, American people, psychologically, we're a different type of that, and we pay attention to different types of things, different incentives. So,
and in terms
that
of
was the
mentality,
background.
sorry, in terms of mentality,
Yes.
there are big differences between Americans and Japanese people.
Of course.
So maybe sometimes by benchmarking method, sometimes because of new paradigms like today we see, Americans, as you said, started to realize their dreams. But normally for Japanese people, there is no need to change anything because they are working very idle. I mean, the workers, they are working without looking to the finishing time of the shift, etc. So they are different, 100% different from lots of nationalities, even from Turkish ones. Okay, yes, please.
Yes, I would say that Chinese also, let's say that Malaysians, I mean, all of those, multi-ethnic countries, they will be different in terms of mentality, in terms of their perception. I agree with you that Japanese, I mean, due to their mentality, due to their, perception, to their ideas, the treatment of work, they're absolutely different, right? But let's say that nowadays, this problem exist in, let me say that, European or European American markets, let's say so. And in this case, we need to find solution for that. I guess that for Japan, for Japanese market environment, the problems here are going to be of another time. But here, in this case, we're just speaking about European and American HR markets. So, again, the company started to think about other incentives, other instruments in order just to offer what they could offer above those functional economic benefits, about high salaries, about bonuses and different other things. So company loyalty, company sharing company's values, or something that could be, let's say, that moving that to the psychological area. All right. In this case, let me give you some statistics. If we think about this notion as a serious one, and I guess that we do, we need to back up with some numbers which identify how serious it might be, and let's say that how this notion is popular out there. So Dell and Ainspan in 2001 had a research, and they surveyed 138 leading companies by the Conference Board in North America. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, 40% of them claimed to be actively engaged in some forms of employer branding activity. It means that by the start of millennium, many companies, some companies, we could say many companies, because 138 is quite a big number, even for North America, they started to adopt those kind of activity, and they started to treat employer branding in a serious way. Later on, we will see I will give some more statistics about how valuable it can be for companies. But again, this research determines the shift that those companies still have to these somehow employer branding techniques, employer branding model ideas, whatever. Now, in 2003, as far as it goes in the British scientific journal, The Economist, the employer brand survey was conducted, and it revealed that 61% level of awareness of this term, or this notion, employer brand, among HR professionals was registered, and 41% of the respondents from non-HR professionals also committed that they know or they are aware of this notion, employer brand. It means that by this time also the notion and the activity was quite popular among the professionals. So it means that the company started to treat that, let's say, the decent way. The Economist is one of the most authoritative British journals, economical journals. So I guess that the results are quite reliable, and we would say that, to me, it's very remarkable that by the start of millennium, many of them were aware, many of the professionals were aware of the notion employer brand. All right. So let me speak about the people perspective in this case. So what is employer brand and how it's being treated, and why it is that important that there was a shift that many professionals started to treat that carefully as an important notion. We would say that our employer brand is influenced by everything we say, we publish, we communicate about ourselves as an employer, and of course by everything we do. As we have already mentioned, it could be the information out there in the social media, in the press, opinions of people. For example, if one person has an opinion of what it might be like to work for you, then this opinion forms your employer brand. This is what employees and other people think about your company as the place of work. I mean, we were speaking about that in, let's say, that companies context. But if we speak about employees context, So they form this employer brand. The company is on one side, but on the other side, on the opposite side, the employees or potential employees or people, by the way, people who do not work in the company, they also form this employer brand, the reputation, and so on. I'm keeping control over the time, so please don't worry. In 4 minutes, I'm going to stop for a break.
We have
just
5 minutes more.
5 minutes more. Well, my shows that we have 4 minutes. All right, no problem. I keep control over the time, so just don't worry. I will stop and give a break.
But I must also by pressing the needed button to stop for stop, so I can control the time. Okay, it's better in terms of Teams program.
I mean, you're the boss. You decide.
Okay, right. I'm the timekeeper. Don't worry.
All right, thanks very much. All right, so in this case, when we speak about employer branding, we have a few questions that we need to ask ourselves in order to go into more detail in that. And these questions are, for example, how do we know what the employer brand is? That's one question. The second one is, can an employer brand be bad as well as good? So, like, let's say that bad employer brand or good employer brand. Another question is, why should we care about any of this? About good side, about bad side, and about our employer brand at all. And finally, how can we manage our employer brand? So these are the questions that will give us a good insight at what we're going to have here and why we treat this employer brand so important way.
May I add one more question?
Sure, of course.
What is the possible relationship between competition strategies and managing employer branding?
So you would like to ask this question, and would you like to answer it?
Later on, if there is an answer from your side.
Well, actually, my presentation is going to last a little bit longer, so most probably that by the end of the lecture, we're going to come to your question and discuss that.
Okay.
All right. Okay. But if you want, you can answer it right now. So
no, it is too early. Maybe you will guess the answer. So the floor is yours. Today you are the boss. I want to just add one question.
All right, no problem. So whenever you feel that you would like to add something, please feel free to do that. So
yes, I will.
Quite open to any kind of initiative from the other side.
This will be interactive as always. So I always try to follow this way of doing.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, one is speaking, other one is sleeping. It means nothing. So, of course, anytime.
I hope that you don't sleep over there, so I guess that I have something interesting to share with you. Right, okay, now let me answer the first question. And the first question is, we say that, how do we know what employer brand is? We said already that this is the reputation, and as we refer back to Jeff Bezos, who said that this is your reputation and this is what other people say when you're not there in the room. So, if your reputation is the collective opinion of what people say when you're not in the room, as Jeff Bezos said, so finding out what they're saying requires you or someone else being in that room and listening. It means that whatever opinion is out there about your brand, you have to absorb that, you have to listen to that, you have to take care of that. So you have to be aware of what kind of opinion is out there in your brand. This is the way how you know about that. I'm going to give some more details and where you're going to do and how you're going to get this information about that in more detail. Nowadays, I would like to focus on the notion that every brand that is thinking seriously about forming a good employer brand and having this kind of employer branding activity has to listen to what kind of opinion it is out there about this brand. This is important. I guess that my time for the first period is over.
You have totally 30 seconds. So if you want, we can stop, or You
I
can
guess
add.
that we can stop right now in order just for me to continue in 10 minutes answering them.
So maybe I can add some words at
You're
least.
welcome.
So up to now, you have given definition about what is employer branding and what are the differences between the process and the outcome of employer branding. And now from that section, you will give more and more details. So thanks for the first hour presentation. So let's give the first break with a duration of 10 minutes, then we will continue.
Okay.
So
See you.
see. Okay.